that day guaranteed. There's nothing worse than trying to find the right gift for somebody that already has everything. Whether that special present is for a Tampa Bay Buccaneers fan or an Alabama Crimson Tide backer, maybe Gramps is a lifelong Dallas Cowboys supporter, or your brother-in-law is in LSU Tiger territory. Know a member of the Baylor Alumni Association? Is there a better Father's Day gift for someone who's a Kansas City Chiefs fan? Send them the coolest present they'll open that day, guaranteed. Now, if your favorite pro team is the Buffalo Bills or those Minnesota Vikings, well, we're sorry about that. Also, if you're a New Mexico State Aggie or a Tulane Green Wave alum, not much they can do. After all, the name isn't nice effort, you had a pretty good season footballs.com. The name is championshipfootballs.com. The coolest present they'll open that day, guaranteed.
Your client's going away for 10 years. Unless we swap first-round picks.
Fantasy football draft season is upon us. It's time for you to put the PP back in the PPR league. With the sponsors of today's show, Manscaped. The leaders in below-the-waist grooming just launched the new Performance Package 4.0. Don't neglect your balls like the Packers front office has been neglecting Aaron Rodgers. Join the 2 million men worldwide who trust Manscaped and get ready for kickoff by going to manscaped.com for 20% off and free shipping with the promo code BELLYUPFANTASY. This will help you tame that Troy Polamalu in your pants. And good news for our international listeners. Their life-changing products are now available in Canada, the UK, across Europe, Australia, South Africa, and Singapore. All with the 20% off and free international shipping when you use the promo code BELLYUPFANTASY today. One of the best sponsors of the show is named SimBull. That's SIMBULL. SimBull, where Wall Street meets sports gambling in this innovative app. The SimBull brings the fun of being able to play for the long term by purchasing, selling, and trading stocks of your teams. When your teams win, you win a payout. Well, when they lose, you don't lose money. The value of your team's share is all that matters, and it's easy to use. Just download the SimBull app on your Play Store and use the promo code MDSFantasy for a $10 deposit of at least $10 or more. Join the fun of investing in your team for the long haul, where the sportsbook edge is put back into your hands as the player. For the latest and most fun in sports gambling, download SimBull and again, use the promo code MDSFantasy for your $10 deposit bonus today. Do you have trouble waking up in the morning? Well, not anymore, because Invader Coffee is here to make you look forward to that morning sunshine. Rated one of the best, smoothest tasting coffees on the market today. Originating out of Texas, this rare coffee product is able to reach new heights in quality from its air roasting process, creating coffee beans with the most robust and smooth flavor you will ever find. So make your mornings more enjoyable by going to invadercoffee.com and use the promo code BELLYUP for 15% off your next purchase. Again, that is promo code BELLYUP for 15% off of your Invader Coffee purchase today at invadercoffee.com. Hey there, sports fans. This is Dan Mater, the host of the MD's Fantasy Football Show, and I am so happy and proud to announce our availability on the Unhinged Radio Network. All you gotta do is go to unhingedsn.airtime.pro to catch us on Sundays at 12 to 1 p.m. or Monday, Thursday, and Fridays from 6 to 7:30 p.m. or on Tuesdays at 7 to 8 p.m. Eastern. That's right, we are available 5 days a week on the Radio Unhinged Network, now powered by Belly Up Sports, giving you the best fantasy football information you could possibly get out there to give yourselves, the MD Nation, the edge in your fantasy football leagues to become champions today. So check out Unhinged Radio and listen to sports talk in a whole new way today.
This is the MD's Fantasy Football Show with Dan Mader, giving you the X's and O's of all things fantasy.
Welcome back, MD Nation, to the MD's Fantasy Football Show. As always, I'm your host, Dan Mader. Just me today on the mic, and you have my deepest appreciation. If you are watching this game or watching the show while watching the Thursday night game going on, or even maybe instead of, because we're just that entertaining. No, seriously, you have my deepest appreciation for tuning in tonight. This is our new thing now. This would have been, normally speaking, our Friday morning show, but we're doing everything a little bit earlier, trying to make everything Monday through Friday, because we think it's going to be more conveniently consumed by you guys in MD Nation, where you get all the information. So obviously, part of the show would be we do a Thursday night recap. We're not going to do a Thursday night recap tonight. However, I'm going to do a Thursday night game cast of such. Basically, if there's a big play, if there's an injury, if there's something newsworthy that comes out while we're doing the show for this game, then I will react to it live as we go through our matchup previews. Everything else stays the same. I'm going to talk about all the injury news from the early slate of games first that we talked about in yesterday's show when we did the Thursday night preview, and all the early slate game matchup previews. Go back to your favorite pod streaming app, iHeart, Google Play, Stitcher, Spotify, iTunes, wherever you like to go, and make sure you check that out as we have, all that information for you guys in that one. Then, when you're all done that, go ahead and check out us on the Unhinged Radio Network tomorrow from 6 to 7:30 p.m. on unhingedsn.airtime.pro. So all that's going to kind of stay the same for you. We'll go through the slate of games. You can go back and check out all the previews so you don't miss a thing as we break down all the fantasy analysis we possibly can for you guys to help you win a championship. Per usual, we're streaming to you guys live on social media at BellyUpMDFF Show and on our YouTube channel, the MD's Fantasy Football Show. Please check us out as soon as possible. Now, the only plays that have happened so far, Mike Evans had a big play, and Tom Brady got a touchdown over there to O.J. Howard. So in case you missed it, that's what's happened so far. Nothing else newsworthy has really happened yet in this game. We'll keep you up to date as we go through. We have a huge injury list, and this is by far the biggest injury list we've had thus far this season. And the ones we're going to drop to you guys they're only from the early slate window of games. So again, the episode we talked about in yesterday's show. So I want to keep you guys all up to date. So let's hit that breaking news sounder.
Breaking news.
Breaking news, big play. Jalen Hurts just hit a big 24-yarder to Quez Watkins. So Quez Watkins getting involved here. So yeah, first up, of course, in this game, Rob Gronkowski was out in the Thursday night game. Dallas Goedert was rolled out for the Thursday night game. We'll see how Zach Ertz is able to go. We do think Rob Gronkowski is going to come back in week 8. They were saying pretty much had this not been a Thursday night matchup, he would have been out there. So I think your top 6 tight end that you're going to play every single week should return to you guys very, very soon. I would expect by next week. And Dallas Goedert, look, he should be back next week too, as long as everything goes well COVID-wise for him. He is vaccinated. However, with him coming back, he's still nothing more than a streamable tight end. That's it. Because Zach Ertz, even before this, have been working at least just as much, and the last couple of weeks have run more routes than Dallas Goedert had. So even when he comes back, and potentially by next week, I don't know how valuable Dallas Goedert is anymore until there's just one tight end. Now, like today's game, Zach Ertz is out there all by himself right now. He's very valuable. He was a must-start for me. He made my top 6. So we'll see if that actually comes to fruition while we're simulcasting this broadcast. The big news that came out this afternoon that caught everybody by surprise, Damian Williams, he winds up having to go on the COVID-19 list, and he tested positive. So there's no way, because when you test positive, even if you're vaccinated, you still have to wait 5 days to get out. You still have to test negative twice within 24 hours in order to get cleared. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen for Damian Williams. So he's going to be out. As a result of that, and I haven't updated this yet on my rankings. You can check out my rankings on BillyFantasySports.com. We update this, throughout the week. It's really a 3-time a week process, because we do the rankings, early in the week. Usually have them out by Wednesday. Then we do them again on Friday when we get all the updated, injury news. And then we do it one more time Sunday morning when you have, all the latest right before kickoff news that comes out in case you have to make any final tweak adjustments kind of thing. So it's really like 3 times we kind of update that. So make sure you're always checking out those rankings again on BillyFantasySports.com. But Damian Williams was my RB17. Khalil Herbert will become an RB2 for me. Now, exactly where he's going to fall, I don't think I'll quite have him as high. The reason why I liked Damian Williams so much at RB17, and especially against this match against the Packers, was because of his pass catching abilities. We haven't seen that out of Khalil Herbert yet. Not saying he can't do it. Not saying they won't give him the opportunity on Sunday. Because right now, frankly, I don't know who else they're going to be able to bring in. He's pretty much the last man left on the depth chart. So by default, he might be worked in on the passing game. But we know Damian Williams had that skill set. And we know against the Green Bay Packers that this was going to be a matchup that the Bears were actually going to have to throw the ball probably more than 20 times. I think everybody would kind of agree with that. So Khalil Herbert will be a must-start RB2 for me heading into a very plus match against the Green Bay Packers, a guy who looked good running the football last week. So if nothing else, I expect him to have efficiency. I expect him to have success on the ground. But Herbert right now, if he was available out there in your waiver wire still, I know a lot of people kind of picked him up after, his performance last week, seeing that he was kind of in a share with Damian Williams. But if he's still out there, he's a bona fide RB2 that's available for you. That was the biggest news that was caught us by surprise. The rest of this was kind of just updates. And we got a touchdown, Jalen Hurts to Zach Ertz. I called it. He was my tight end 6. That puts me on a good path. If you just automatically get a touchdown, I automatically get a guy who is going to be involved, who's going to be in the top 10. If you get a touchdown to tight end, you're going to be a top 10 guy. So there we go. That's part of the Thursday Night Gamecast now, guys. We're going to be giving you live updates as we go through the show. All right. So now, just a little side note here. Mike Evans hits a touchdown. I went a big-time parlay. Anyway, Tua Tagovailoa, he returned. He continues to practice. He's going to make the trip. He's going to start. I mean, every indication is that Tua Tagovailoa is going to start in the London game. We expect him to go. I am getting in more word here. This is even worse for Tampa Bay. Richard Sherman has a hamstring injury and is now out. So you want to talk about a team that just has nothing left at the corner position. They have nothing left at the corner position. So Devonta Smith fans, hold on, because you're probably going to get some work here throughout this week. Tua's going to come back. Devontae Parker did not practice today. So it was 2 days in a row he didn't practice, and he's working from a hamstring injury. It's usually not a good sign, but he still made the trip to London, or reportedly he's going to make the trip to London. So it does lead us to believe that perhaps Devontae Parker will be able to at least try to give it a go. We'll see what happens. I kind of doubt it as of this moment that he would really be able to go after not practicing 2 days in a row, coming off a hamstring injury in which he wasn't able to go last week. But if he does play, we are talking about the Jacksonville Jaguars. So he would become a wide receiver 3, a flex-worthy consideration if that winds up being the case. Again, we'll have to watch that and see if that comes to fruition. I, at this point, would doubt Parker would play, and therefore you'd have target consolidation with an upgraded quarterback for a Jalen Waddle and a Mike Gesicki. And if Dolphins stay smart, a Myles Gaskin, because that's the part we don't know yet. I'd have to imagine after last week, though, Myles Gaskin gets the nod, at least hoping logic prevails. We all know that doesn't always work out that way sometimes. Then we had Tyreek Hill. Excuse me. I'll talk about Tyreek Hill first. Tyreek Hill, he didn't practice again today. That is the worry, right? Because we're told from the get-go, Andy Reid said, minor knee injury. He didn't practice Wednesday, but they did expect him to play in the game. I'm very positive about that the entire week. That's the only positive thing that you could take at all right now, is that they've been positive about Tyreek Hill being available on Sunday. But it's all speak. It's all coach speak. It's all hearsay. If he doesn't get out there and practice at least in a limited capacity tomorrow, not that Tyreek Hill can't still practice, not that Tyreek Hill can't still play, even if he didn't practice, but I'd be very, very concerned. Now, he's dealing with a quad contusion, so it's not something, regardless, that I think is going to be long-term, but we're already in the bye weeks here in week 6. If you don't Tyreek Hill, a lot of teams could be in a bad way, so just keep an eye on that. If Tyreek Hill were to miss, in a weird way, it doesn't usually happen with wide receivers, but there is a handcuff here. I think you would have to pick up and play Mecole Hardman. He's still widely available in a lot of waiver leagues out there, and coming off of his best performance of the season last week, where he actually got utilized in the target share, I would have to. Now we've seen this in the past where it didn't want to be a Mecole Hardman, and it goes back and forth, and I get it. I would have to lean towards Mecole Hardman being the number 1 receiver for the Kansas City Chiefs in that game. And remember, they got to get right in this matchup against Washington, and it's a good matchup on paper. We have seen it be like Demarcus Robinson, who typically plays more snaps because he's a better blocker, but doesn't run as many routes as Mecole Hardman does. Hardman would be the guy I would want to play, although you'd have to keep in mind you're still probably playing a low-end wide receiver 3 because we've seen plenty of situations in the past where he's not going to take advantage of this situation, even if he's the number 1 guy when Tyreek Hill's out. So hopefully, though, Andy Reid's telling the truth, Tyreek Hill is telling the truth, and that he's still ultimately going to go, and they're just playing it very cautious with him with the quad contusion. We'll have to see, but I feel a lot better about it if he's able to practice again tomorrow. Travis Kelce was out there, so he's good to go. We don't have to worry about him. Curtis Samuel, I said it yesterday, he had a setback in the groin injury. They're not going to bring this guy back this week. I honestly would not be surprised if Curtis Samuel winds up going on the IR, the short-term IR again. That would not shock me in the least bit. I don't think Curtis Samuel is really going to be fantasy relevant at any point this season. Plain and simple. It was still a new offense. He was trying to get himself worked in, still trying to build chemistry. And then on top of all of that, he's going to have to get back into football shape because he hasn't been on the field to do so. So Curtis Samuel is somebody that you've probably already dropped him at this point, but I don't think he's ever going to have fantasy value at all at any point this season. Antonio Gibson did come back. He didn't practice yesterday, did practice in a limited capacity today. So that's the good news. We do know that while he's dealing with this shin stress fracture, or whatever they're calling it, it hasn't hindered him as far as workload goes. And when we're talking about the coaching staff today, they simply said he's good to go. He's fine. We're just going to manage him in practice. So he's on the right track. I don't think there's any reason to be concerned there. Dalvin Cook got a full workload of practice in. So while most of this injury report is negative, Dalvin Cook, one of the few bright spots I can actually report on, was listed as a full participant in practice today. Alexander Mattison listed as a limited participant in practice. You love to see that. Coming back off the ankle, he's full on Thursday. If he can be full again tomorrow and he doesn't have any setbacks, I think we're going to have a full workload for Dalvin Cook against this Carolina team heading into week 6. You'll get your top RB3 back. He's my RB6 right now. I was doing that to be a little bit conservative with the idea that maybe perhaps he's not a full 100% go, but if he's practicing in full, he'll probably move into my top 5, maybe even my top 3 before the week is out. He'll definitely move up at least a couple spots. Why? Because Christian McCaffrey did not practice today. That is not a good sign. He's been practicing in a limited capacity every single week since he's had the injury. For him to suddenly, on the week that we're all expecting him to really come back, or we're leaning more than 50% for this guy to finally come back, why they didn't put him on the IR in the first place, because they thought they'd have him back by this week, and he doesn't practice on a Thursday. That's alarming. I think we got to watch what happens tomorrow, of course, and we'll keep you up to date on social media at BellyUpMDFF Show like we always do with our players' news notifications. But if he can't practice tomorrow, I think I would already start tonight making plans as if you may not have Christian McCaffrey again this week. It would be unfortunate. It would mean them not putting him on the IR was a waste because he would have been eligible to come back week 7 anyway. But not a good sign for him to not practice on Thursday, which would be the first time he hasn't practiced since having the injury, at least in a limited capacity. So we have to watch that. A lot of concern there right now for Christian McCaffrey being able to return this week. Sammy Watkins, he had suffered the hamstring injury on Monday Night Football. He did not practice. I don't know yet if he's going to play or not. We'll have to wait for tomorrow's injury report. Obviously, for Sammy, this isn't really fantasy relevant for Sammy Watkins. It's fantasy relevant for Rashad Bateman, who's set to make his return this week. It could affect the role that he could get, where he would probably be worked in slowly, maybe gets a more prominent role right off the bat. And if nothing else, it just consolidates more targets heading towards Marquise Brown, who's been an absolute stud and is my wide receiver 18 on the week anyway. Mixon did not practice today. Also, not as concerning as the Christian McCaffrey thing. He was on the sideline in a hoodie. It's not as concerning because he never got reported as having a setback in practice yesterday. He practiced in limited capacity after playing in the game on Sunday. We saw last week he didn't practice at all, and they still wound up having him activated, albeit on a limited basis. So basically for Joe Mixon, I'm not panicking yet. I'm not too concerned yet until we find out, unless we find out tomorrow that he didn't practice again. Then I would say that points to some sort of re-aggravation to some level that he had during practice on Wednesday. That's what that would point to. I'm not too worried about it as of yet, but we will take a look at this. Samaje Perine, because he did test positive for COVID-19 on Monday, and there's a very good chance that he's going to wind up missing the game. Again, you have to have 2 tests within 24 hours, negative, and he tested positive for the virus. So there's a very good chance he's not going to be able to suit up. If Joe Mixon could not go, if he did suffer some kind of setback, Chris Evans would be the guy to pick up. He would be the handcuff. Now, he was a low pick rookie. But I do like his skill set of a Chris Evans. He's able to do a little bit of everything. He can break some tackles. But the fact that he would pretty much be the lone man left at that point, who's been involved at all this season, and he can do a little bit of everything. He can play a 3-down role. He has that skill set to do so. He would also be a guy who would be probably a low-end RB2 for me heading into this matchup as a pickup. So if you have Joe Mixon and you have the capability, again, I'm not panicking, but if you have the capability of doing so, pick up Chris Evans just to be safe. That's going to be the handcuff for you guys this week with Samaje Perine out. Hockenson didn't practice on Wednesday. He did return to a limited practice on Thursday, so it's a good sign with him with the knee that he'll be active and participating. I don't think we were really worried too much about him actually being active. We got a touchdown, and if Antonio Brown, sorry, I know let's switch gears on you, but again, this is the game cast. When big plays happen, we talk about them. Tom Brady just threw a touchdown pass to Antonio Brown. Antonio Brown, who's been on fire the last couple of weeks with Tom Brady. They're just feeding him away everywhere. Wow. 2 touchdowns. We already got a high-scoring game. Thankfully, Chris and I told you guys yesterday to bet the over, so we're looking pretty good on our way to that right now in the first quarter. Where was I at? Okay, so here we go. The big thing about Hockenson, we were never really worried about him being activated into this game. What we were worried about is him getting back to the level of participation he was having the first 2 weeks. Regardless of that, he's a top tight end. He's getting the routes run. He's getting the targets. Better days are ahead for TJ Hockenson. There's no reason to panic on a guy who will finish as a top 5 tight end by the end of the year. Mark my words, barring injury. T.Y. Hilton, he still continues to practice. He did practice yesterday, practiced again today. We still have not gotten any official word that he will be designated to return from IR and therefore be able to play this week. That has not happened officially yet, so we're still waiting on that. Again, I know it's Houston this week, which makes it a little bit tempting because T.Y. Hilton just always seems to find a way to have a great game against Houston. Maybe if he does get activated, you want to have some fun with it and plug him in your DFS lineup, fine. But otherwise, I'm not going to bother with it. All we're really watching this from a fantasy standpoint is what's our expectations for Michael Pittman? Will he get some targets taken away? Mo Alley-Cox, who's a sleeper tight end for some, who's a sleeper tight end for Chris, will he have some targets taken away with the return to T.Y. Hilton? That becomes more of the question if he's returning this week more than, does T.Y. Hilton become a must-play this particular week? He would not be. Not his first game back. We don't know exactly where he is, what kind of game shape he's in just yet. I doubt he would see his full workload his first week back anyway. So we'll wait to see exactly what happens, but he is practicing. Is somebody who's probably worth picking up if you're looking for wide receivers and stashing when he does return, because he does have the big play capability, something his offense is in desperate need of. That's the one thing I will say about the Colts. It is very, very crystal clear. They are in desperate need of a field stretcher. And right now, the only guy who that might be because of the role they have Paris Campbell playing, because Paris Campbell's a bust. There's nothing to expect out of Paris Campbell. The only one who might provide that for him for them would be a T.Y. Hilton. So that's what we have to look out for there. Daniel Jones, he did practice in a limited capacity today. Great news. We talked about that yesterday. When you don't practice on Wednesday, it gets a bit concerning if you're going to be able to clear concussion protocol by that following week. But you have to at least practice by Thursday. If you don't practice by Thursday, it's not going to happen. He did practice in a limited capacity today with the non-contact red jersey on. So Joe Judge, who is being very, very optimistic about having Daniel Jones on Sunday, does look like it is trending, or at least going in, I don't want to say trending in the right direction, but going towards the right direction. It'll be trending in the right direction if he's practicing again tomorrow and he gets cleared by Saturday. Then it'll be trending in the right direction. Kenny Golladay, Saquon Barkley, again, they didn't practice today. We don't expect them to play this week. You're not going to have Kenny Golladay. You're not going to have Saquon Barkley this week. You will have Devontae Booker, who's a low-end RB2 for me, purely based on volume. I don't love the matchup. I don't love Booker behind that offensive line. I don't love Booker. I mean, he's just a guy. He's just a guy who's there, who can do a little bit of everything, so he's valuable as a backup, but he's nothing more than volume-based, and I really think you're probably going to be hoping for him to score a touchdown to actually even get you to RB2 status. So he's a low-end RB2 for me, but he does have a high bust floor in a game in which the Giants may have to throw anyway going up against the Rams here. So that's what's going to be interesting to me for that, but he does come in there because the volume is just all going to be there. And again, you have 4 teams on bye, so he makes the RB2 list with Saquon Barkley out. Kadarius Toney, Sterling Shepard, Darius Slayton, all practice today, all expected to play. So while they won't have Kenny Golladay, it does seem like they will have all of their other wide receivers. Now, there's some talk. Chris brought this up yesterday. It was a good point, and we looked in some more, and they did kind of reiterate that today. There's been some talk that Sterling Shepard's playing the outside more so, and Kadarius Toney's playing the slot more so. Right now, I have Sterling Shepard ranked at wide receiver 33, Kadarius Toney at wide receiver 41. I have Shepard ahead because I was assuming that Kadarius Toney would take more of the Kenny Golladay role or the Darius Slayton role, and Slayton would take the Kenny Golladay role, whatever the case may have been, and Sterling Shepard would return to his slot receiver role because he's so good there and has been so dependable there and has always been Daniel Jones' favorite target there. Well, I guess after last week, it seems like in practice, at least from what we're being told, we'll see, that we know how that can change. It sounds like Kadarius Toney may have the opportunity to stay in the slot. If that happens, I will flip-flop my rankings, where Kadarius Toney will be ranked ahead of Sterling Shepard. Because, again, I go back to this point, and this is why Kenny Golladay is fantasy dead to me and is nothing more than a wide receiver 4 that you're hoping for a touchdown out of, which, by the way, he still hasn't done. The slot receiver, whoever that is, that's the number 1 receiver for Daniel Jones and the Giants. That's who you want to play in your fantasy lineup. So if that winds up being Kadarius Toney, then you're playing Toney. If it winds up being Sterling Shepard, you're playing Sterling Shepard. We will reflect that in our rankings throughout the weekend. So again, go to BillElliotFantasySports.com. Make sure you're checking that out throughout the week, as we will get that updated as we get more and more information. All right, here's what I want to do now. After we finally got that long laundry list of injury news out of the way, I do want to get a word in from our sponsor real quick. When we come back on the other side, we are going to start to preview the late slate of games for Week 6 and get you ready, guys, for another win on your way to the playoffs, on a way to a championship here at MD Nation. So everybody stay tuned to the MD's Fantasy Football Show. We'll be back with you guys right after this. The NFL is back in action, and so is winning season at MyBookie. With over $500,000 in contest prize money, winning season makes the big games better and the victories even sweeter. Head to MyBookie.ag and choose from a variety of boost contests and promotions up for grabs, highlighted by the crown jewel of winning season, the famed MyBookie Super Contest. And it only costs $10 to enter. Pick 5 games against the spread each week. Each win earns you a point, and each point gets you closer to the grand prize. If you missed out on Week 1, don't even sweat it, because entries are still open, and all it takes is one solid week to get you back in the mix. Don't just take my word for it. Join now and start your winning season with MyBookie today. In order to get you started, make your first deposit at MyBookie.ag and use promo code MDFantasy to instantly receive double your deposit. That's double your money to double your winnings with your first ever deposit using promo code MDFantasy. Bet anything, anytime, anywhere with MyBookie. Welcome back, MD Nation, to the show. You are listening to the MD's Fantasy Football Show. We're streaming to you live on social media at BellyUpMDFF Show, and of course on YouTube. Subscribe to the MD's Fantasy Football Show as soon as you get the chance. We'll be available to you after the show on your favorite pod streaming app, iTunes, iHeart, Google Play, Stitcher, Spotify, Spreaker. And then make sure you check us out on Friday night from 6 to 7:30 on the Unhinged Radio Network at unhingedsn.airtime.pro. And I forgot to mention the first half of the show, but make sure you check us out at 9 o'clock tomorrow night as well, to 9 o'clock on Friday night, because that's when we'll be streaming again live on social media and on YouTube with the MD's DFS contest, the free contest that we do for you guys every single week on DraftKings, where you have the opportunity to win a free week of the Easy Sports betting data from Mr. Chaz Filardi. Now, what that is, it gives you a cheat code of all this data that tells you how to bet 8 different ways to bet on every single game. So it's going to find you ways to win money. And if you don't want to have to win it, all you got to do is go to BellyUpFantasySports.com, go to the Easy Sports betting Easy Sports betting data site, and it's $16.50. That's it. I guarantee you'll win more than $16.50 when you go. Okay, now we talked about the injury updates that we talked about in the early slate of games that we talked about in yesterday's show. Now we have the late slate matchup previews. And kicking things off, we got the Arizona Cardinals and the Cleveland Browns. Now, a lot of it had to do with health, but we have to ask ourselves, which Cleveland Brown defense are we going to get? Because we don't know. That was the big key. They let up 47 points to the Chargers. Now, the Chargers have an excellent offense right now. I'm not taking anything away from them whatsoever. But the Cleveland Browns defense is typically better than that. And while it was a little bit of a weird game, we just saw the week before, they only gave up 7 points to the Minnesota Vikings. So, who maybe aren't as good offensively, the Chargers, but they're definitely competent. They're definitely a good offense right now. So, which Browns defense are we going to get? Regardless, obviously, you're playing Kyler Murray, like QB4 for the week. You're playing DeAndre Hopkins, although, here's what I will say, Hopkins has missed the last 2 days due to an illness. I put this out on social media earlier. I said, as long as he's over his illness by Sunday, he'll play, because it wouldn't be the first time DeAndre Hopkins has gone all week without practicing, still playing on Sunday, and then putting up wide receiver 1 like numbers. He is my wide receiver 7 this week. As long as he plays, that's not going to change for me whatsoever against Cleveland Browns, who are dealing with a lot of injuries, especially in the secondary as of this moment. Christian Kirk, AJ Green, Rondale Moore. Every single one of those guys are wide receiver 4s, wide receiver 5s to me. They're still eating into each other too much. AJ Green is still playing too much. Rondale Moore, for the first time, ran more routes than Christian Kirk, which everybody's like to point out so far this week, but they kind of failed to mention there was only 2 more routes. I don't know how excited I am about a player who, for the first time, ran more routes than the 3rd receiver on the team, and it was only 2 more. We got to see that actually continue before you get too excited about it. I would not be playing AJ Green, Christian Kirk, or Rondale Moore with any confidence whatsoever this week. Maybe DFS a little bit, consider it as a contrarian play here or there, but certainly not in redraft leagues. I think even with guys on bye, you should have better options than one of them. Hopefully. Chase Edmonds did practice in a limited capacity the past 2 days. That is a market improvement, because remember last week, he couldn't practice until Friday in a limited capacity. So the fact he's been able to practice so far this entire week up until this point is definitely a good sign that he'll be active and perhaps have closer to the workload that we've expected him to have. Because remember last week, he didn't play as much as he normally does. He still had more snaps than James Conner, but he wasn't as involved on the ground, didn't have as many targets. In general, the Cardinals' offense didn't put up as many points as we're used to seeing. I expect a little bit of a bounce back here in this game. I especially expect them to go over 17 points in this game, that being a big key on it. And I expect Edmonds to have to get involved here, because I don't think Conner, he's been inefficient against everybody. I don't expect him to have success here against the Cleveland Browns either. I do think the Cardinals will have to throw the ball a little bit more. And if Edmonds is a little bit more healthy, I think he'll get back to his RB2 status, which he has been, especially in half-point and full-point PPR leagues. In half-point PPR leagues, like we always rank our players anyway, he is my RB 18 on the week. I feel confident firing him up as definitely a top end flex play, but a guy you can fire up in your RB2 spot and feel pretty confident about as well. James Conner, the guy scored touchdowns 3 games straight now. So he does come in as RB 28 for me. He is a flex play. He is an RB3 consideration. Yes, you need the touchdown, but that's why you'd be playing James Conner in the first place, which he's done the past 3 weeks. So You know what you're getting with Connor. You know what you're hoping for with Connor. You play him if you think you're going to get it or if you have no other options. But he does come in at RB28 for me because he is on one heck of a touchdown streak as of right now. On the Brown side of the ball, a quick thing. Max Williams officially going on the IR, so he's definitely going to be out for the season. So we'll have to wait and see if there's a tight end that actually reveals themselves to be noteworthy on the Arizona Cardinals or not. I have to think, though, this will just be more target consolidation for Edmonds and for the wide receivers. So we go into Cleveland now. Baker Mayfield, is dealing with that shoulder injury on his non-throwing shoulder. The only thing you're worried about is his fundamentals breaking down. If he's in too much pain, does he square his shoulders the way he's supposed to before he throws the ball? If not, the ball could sail on him. It could affect his accuracy. But he can still throw the football without much discomfort. So we'll see exactly how that plays out. That does matter when it comes to the wide receivers. But Jarvis Landry, while he's been practicing, is not expected to come back this week. So as a result, once again, we get left in this position. OBJ, what do you do with him? He comes in at wide receiver 34 for me. So he's a back end wide receiver 3. He still sets up to get targets this week with no Jarvis Landry. The OC came out, the offensive coordinator came out and said, we have to get OBJ more involved in the offense. So you are setting up this week, and we've already seen a couple times this year, the Robert Woods game especially sticking out to it should be everybody. We've seen a couple times this year where it seems like the squeaky wheel gets the grease, and the signs are there, in this case, for that to happen for OBJ. If you have the offensive coordinator on a Thursday telling the press how they need to get OBJ more involved, I definitely think there will be a concerted effort to get him some extra targets in this game. Jarvis Landry staying out for another week just helps propel that. So that's why he's my wide receiver 3. Do I feel good about it if I have to start him? No. Because for whatever reason, whether they try to feature him or not, Baker Mayfield does a horrendous job trying to get him the ball since he's been there. But the volume, this is totally process over result here. I understand that. If you've had OBJ and you've been getting burned by him, if you have another option to pivot to, so be it. I wouldn't argue with you. But the process here dictates that OBJ should be a fantasy asset this week. He should be in a position to be a squeaky wheel getting the grease this week. He should be. While Arizona has been pretty good against wide receivers, I still don't buy them as actually being a good defense against wide receivers. Their secondary is not that talented. However, you've been able to run the ball like crazy on them, which now leads us into the running backs. I'll lead off with this. If Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt are active, obviously you're playing them. Nick Chubb's my RB8, Kareem Hunt, my RB15. However, neither one of them practiced for a second day in a row. That is concerning. I feel as though I'm a little bit more concerned about Nick Chubb than I am about Kareem Hunt, being that he's listed with a calf injury, while Kareem Hunt is listed with a wrist and a knee. That's what kind of concerns me. The soft tissue injuries concern me a bit more than anything else would. Now, with the knee, if it's a sprain or an MCL thing, that can be a little bit concerning too. That can also linger. But I'm a little bit more worried about the soft tissue injury than I am about anything else. We'll have to see exactly what happens. Hopefully, they practice in a limited capacity on Friday. If they don't, let's say they both wind up being out somehow, even though they weren't said to have an injury during the game, but let's say they wind up both being out. D'Ernest Johnson would be the guy to own. Now, if you look at the depth chart right now, Demetric Felton, he is the third string running back. But that's because he plays special teams. He gets involved in the passing game every once in a while here. They like to line him up a wide receiver. He does other things. The guy who would take over as the main runner in the absence of Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt would be D'Ernest Johnson. And we've seen D'Ernest Johnson put up decent performances when given the opportunity before. Let's put this for an instance. Let's say Joe Mixon's out, and let's say Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt are all out. I know, nobody wants to think that way, but let's say that happens. I would rather have a D'Ernest Johnson than a Chris Evans this week. I would rather have a D'Ernest Johnson than a Devontae Booker this week. Just to kind of give you guys a for instance of what his value would be if both Chubb and Hunt were to wind up missing this game. So that's who you would want. Demetric Felton will probably get involved in some capacity in the passing game. There's really no doubt about that, but I don't know if he gets a full workload, and I don't know how involved he'd be in the carry game. It would be D'Ernest Johnson as the main running back for the Cleveland Browns, which is going to be of value, of course, because they're still going to be a run-first team regardless, especially in this matchup. So something just to kind of keep in mind as we're waiting for the injury reports on Friday to come out. You find out that they didn't practice again, and it doesn't look like neither one's going to play. You run to your waiver wire, you pick up D'Ernest Johnson. That's who you want. There's nothing else I want in this game, by the way. I don't want Austin Hooper. I don't want any of the tight ends, any of the other wide receivers. Rashard Higgins has actually been a more productive wide receiver, but I still don't want to touch that with a 10-foot pole. Betting-wise on this game, over-under set at 49.5. And the line right now is -3.5 in favor of Cleveland over Arizona, Cleveland being at home. Not going to bet this game right now. Now, I may bring this game up again tomorrow night when we do the lock bets of the week with Chaz Flaherty in the second half of that show, the MD's DFS contest and lock bets of the week show. I may bring it back up then, but right now, with this amount of key players completely in flux as far as whether or not they're going to be able to play, there's no way I'm betting this game as of tonight. So I'm just going to stay away from that line, stay away from the over-under, stay away from all of it until we have a little bit more information. That's not a game you want to jump on, earlier on in the week. So let's move on to the Raiders and the Denver Broncos matchup. Now, the big question on everybody's mind, what are we going to get out of the Raiders? How are they going to respond to John Gruden having to abruptly resign for all the nastiness that he had to resign for? There's really no other way to put it. How are they going to react? Are they going to rally? Will it be an emotional thing? Or are they going to be demoralized, depleted? That's anybody's guess. As fantasy football owners, all we can do is look at the numbers, look at the matchup, look at how we expect them to play. That's what I'm going to be watching for. I'm not going to be looking for the emotion. The game line, the game story will be about emotionally how do these guys respond. I'm going to be watching the scheme. I want to know if that scheme changes at all. And obviously, the play calling and all that, that's not going to completely vastly change. I talked about that, the other day. But I do want to see if some of the play calling tendencies change. Are they a little more aggressive? Are they a little more conservative? Does Josh Jacobs be more of a workhorse back? Does Kenyon Drake have a resurgence where he gets worked back in? Those little things are what I'm going to be looking for throughout this game. As it stands right now, I'm going into this matchup with Josh Jacobs as my RB19. So he's going to be my lineup, of course. He's going to be an RB2. While, last week, Najee Harris went for 100 yards, up until that point, it had been very difficult to run on the Denver Broncos. I'm not ready to sit here and say the Denver Broncos are now a run defense you can take advantage of because of one bad game. So I'm not going to get overly excited about Josh Jacobs, but he is in my lineup. I do have some confidence that he can find the end zone in this one. Receiver-wise, nothing's going to change for me yet. Hunter Renfrow is a wide receiver 4. Henry Ruggs is a boomer bust wide receiver 4. Bryan Edwards is unplayable. Nothing really changes for me on the wide receiver front. We still have to see how that shakes out. Hunter Renfrow is never going to have a big ceiling. So that's kind of the problem. He comes out wide receiver 44 for me for that reason. I know he's had a nice floor so far this week, or so far this season, I should say. But because of the lack of ceiling, you're just never going to be excited about him. Because if he doesn't, let's say he doesn't get that, that 8 target, that 5 reception, that 50 to 80 yards that week, you're screwed. Because he can't do any better than that. It's not in his DNA. At least with Henry Ruggs, that he might win you the week, 1 week. But he's not getting enough utilization to want to play him either at this point. So I'm still waiting for the wide receivers to shake out. And obviously, Darren Waller, you're playing him as a tight end 3. This is not a great matchup for him at all. But you're not going to not play Darren Waller, obviously. But there are a lot of things on the Raiders side of the ball that we're going to be watching for a future reference when it comes to fantasy football. On the Denver Broncos side of the ball, Melvin Gordon did come back into practice in limited capacity today after not practicing on Wednesday. So I have Gordon ranked 22, and I have Javonte ranked 25. I so badly want to flip it. I really do, but I can't. Even last week, when Melvin Gordon got hurt later in the week and was not 100% heading into the game, he still had one more carry to Javonte Williams. He still played more snaps than Javonte Williams. Williams has been the more efficient back. Williams is the future. Until Melvin Gordon's inactive, I don't know if he gets the opportunity to really showcase what he can do. And then hopefully when he gets that opportunity to showcase what he can do, Melvin Gordon never finds the field again, because we want Javonte Williams to just take over, because he's a very talented back. He's very young. We want to see what he can really be. What is his ceiling? So that's why Melvin Gordon, for me, though, because of the snap counts, because they seem to just stick with him. They're giving him more of the work still, even though he's being less efficient with it for the most part. That's why he comes in at RB22 for me, and why Javonte is RB25. Both of them, of course, are plays this week. I'll play Williams in my flex. I'll play Melvin Gordon as a low in RB2. Hopefully that thing shakes out soon, though, because right now, even for Melvin Gordon's case, his ceiling gets cut because he's splitting time with Javonte Williams. It's a very frustrating situation where you have to deal with, basically, if whichever one you have, they don't play and they don't score, I should say, then they wind up being a bust play for you in your lineup. And that's what's so frustrating about that situation. Courtland Sutton, my wide receiver 23 on the week. I like the matchup. I like that he's been coming on strong. I like that he had a good game against the Pittsburgh Steelers last week. And remember, this is a guy who's still trying to come back from his ACL injury. He's still getting his legs under him. So yeah, he's had 2 good games out of 5. But this is the part of the year where you can expect him to start to get back into that football shape, back to that football star mold that he was in before he got hurt. And we still have another week or 2 before Jerry Jeudy can really return. So that's why I'm looking for Courtland Sutton to really take advantage and get going here. Got him at wide receiver 23, but he has more upside than that heading into this matchup. Noah Fant, I expect a bounce back week. I think Albert O is going to miss again this week against the Raiders. Much better matchup here. Steelers are very good against tight ends. I think you have a good shot for Noah Fant to bounce back this week. I have him at tight end 7 on the week. You're definitely playing him. And Tim Patrick comes in at wide receiver 40 for me. Tim Patrick is a quintessential pick him up off the waiver wire, because he's still available in a lot of leagues. Pick him up off the waiver wire. If you need a spot start this week in your flex or your wide receiver because of buys or injuries or whatever, especially after that injury list that we went through at the beginning of the show, you can plug and play him. And you can expect a high floor with the upside of touchdowns, because that's what Tim Patrick does. He puts up 70 to 80 yards, and he has the potential for a score. So pick him up. Spot start him. If you're looking for that guy off the waiver wire, he's the guy. Ooh, this isn't good. So we're going back to the Thursday night game here. Antonio Brown is hurt. The Buck trainers are looking at his left leg, getting other reports here that says he's possibly dealing with some sort of foot issue. So we'll have to keep an eye on Antonio Brown. Hopefully he's able to come back in this game and it's nothing serious. But that is going on as of right now on this simulcast, or this Thursday night gamecast, I should say. What we're going to do now, though, on that note, we're going to take a quick break. Come back on the other side. We got more games to preview for you guys on the late slate of Week 6 matchups. So everybody stay tuned to the MD's Fantasy Football Show. We'll be back with you right after this.
Your client's going away for 10 years. Unless we swap first-round picks.
Fantasy football draft season is upon us. It's time for you to put the PP back in the PPR league with the sponsors of today's show, Manscaped. The leaders in below-the-waist grooming just launched the new Performance Package 4.0. Don't neglect your balls like the Packers front office has been neglecting Aaron Rodgers. Join the 2 million men worldwide who trust Manscaped and get ready for kickoff by going to manscaped.com for 20% off and free shipping with the promo code BELLYUPFANTASY. This will help you tame that Troy Polamalu in your pants. And good news for our international listeners. Their life-changing products are now available in Canada, the UK, across Europe, Australia, South Africa, and Singapore. All with the 20% off and free international shipping when you use the promo code BELLYUPFANTASY today.
You're listening to the MD's Fantasy Football Show.
Welcome back, MD Nation, to the show. You are listening and or watching the MD's Fantasy Football Show on social media at BellyUp MDFF Show or on the YouTube channel. Subscribe to the MD's Fantasy Football Show when you get the opportunity to do so. We always have great content coming out for you there. We're actually at BellyUp MDFF Show on other places too, like TikTok. I don't really mention that too often. We're also on the Fox D network, which is right now available to you on Roku, soon to be Apple and Amazon TV. So we'll be going TV, guys. We're going MD Nation. We're going TV soon. Or technically, we're actually TV right now, but we're going to go in more places soon to be. And of course, check us out after the show on your favorite pod streaming app, iHeart, Google Play, Stitcher, Spotify, Spreaker, and check us out tomorrow, 6 to 7:30 on the Unhinged Radio Network at unhingedsn.airtime.pro. And we'll be back again on social media and on YouTube, streaming to you live at 9 o'clock for the MD's DFS contest and lock bets of the week. I didn't go over the betting lines for the Raiders and the Broncos. Good reason. I'm not going to bet them anyway. Spoiler alert. But the line as of right now, -3.5 in favor of the Broncos. Over under set at 43.5. If I was going to bet in this game at all, I would say it's on the Broncos. I think it's more likely that the Raiders are not able to beat Denver in Denver after all the distractions this week than not. So I would take the Denver Broncos -3.5 if I was going to bet it. But I'm always honest with you guys. I'm never going to tell you to bet something if I'm not going to bet it myself, because that would just be irresponsible for me on this show. So I would say what I would do if you really want to bet this game. Let's say you're a fan of the game, Raiders, Broncos, you want to win some money while you're watching this game anyway. That's what I would do if I had to, but I'm not actually going to put money on that game, just so you guys know. All right. Well, let's talk about the Cowboys and the Patriots. There's a lot of fantasy things to talk about when it comes to the Cowboys right now. What you don't have to talk about is Ezekiel Elliott. He's an RB4. He's pounding away. The weight being, he's still just as powerful he ever was, even with the weight off. And I think with the weight off, he actually looks closer to what he was as a rookie as far as his explosion ability goes. But he just looks like a man possessed right now, and he's just churning out big run after big run, tough run after tough run, and he's really wearing these defenses down. And he's been great getting back to fantasy football glory for Ezekiel Elliott. Tony Pollard does come in as my RB32. He continues to get double-digit touches. If you're a running back who's explosive and getting double-digit touches, guess what? You have upside. And going up against the New England Patriots, while I think, I don't think they're as bad as what they showed against Houston Texans. Everybody's like, salivating, like, well, it's all Davis Mills went for 300 yards and Houston should have won that game. And everyone's salivating at the mouth and saying New England's is, they're not this good defense anymore. I don't think they're great, but it was just 2 weeks ago where they shut down what's going to be one of the top offenses, if not the top offense in the NFL by the end of the year in Tampa Bay and Tom Brady. I think they're somewhere in the middle. I think they're somewhere in the middle of those two scenarios. All right. So I'm not licking my chops necessarily for this matchup on the Dallas Cowboys side of things. But again, if Pollard's getting double-digit touches, he's an RB3 flex consideration, especially as we're getting in the bye weeks. That's why he's an RB32. The bigger question that we're all asking ourselves is, what do you do with the wide receivers? CeeDee Lamb, wide receiver 20, Amari Cooper, wide receiver 21 for me this week. But it's all legitimate questions. They've been disappointing to this point. Now, there's a lot of factors for that. It hasn't been because CeeDee Lamb's been bad or Amari Cooper's been bad or Dak Prescott's been bad. That's not the case. That's not why, they haven't been performing up to your fantasy football expectations. The reason why really is the defense. They've been competent this year. As a result, Dak Prescott hasn't had to throw the ball nearly as much, and they've been able to win with the running game and playing defense in a couple of games. There hasn't been as much volume. There's a lot of things I am concerned about. I mean, I'm concerned when Michael Gallup comes back. If the Cowboys are still able to play this way and have these kind of game scripts that they've been able to have the past, really every game since the Tampa Bay Buccaneers game in week 1, I'm a little bit worried what a returning Michael Gallup would then do to what's already been a shrinking target share. Now, I think the first victim, when that does happen, it's not supposed to happen this week, but it could be happening next week or the week after. It's going to be soon. I think the first victim is Dalton Schultz, who comes in at tight end 8 for me this week. So he's a must play this week. I heard this somewhere. I'm going to repeat it. This is not my original thought. I'll be transparent here, but I do agree with it. I think it's sound fantasy football advice. Dalton Schultz needs to be a guy that you trade. He needs to be a sell high. First of all, tight ends who are good, which he is right now, are definitely of value because you have a number of people out there who are desperate trying to stream these guys. But he only has a couple of weeks left of fantasy relevancy. When Michael Gallup comes back on a team that's already not necessarily throwing the ball a ton, I don't know how effective Dalton Schultz is going to be because the target consolidation is still going to go more towards the wide receivers than it's going to be the tight ends. It is. Trust me. Michael Gallup comes back. That's going to take away from the tight ends. It might take a couple away from CeeDee Lamb and Amari Cooper because it'll take more of the targets away from the tight end position. So I'm worried about Dalton Schultz. He would be the guy I think probably gets left out more times than not and would suddenly become from this top 10 tight end he's become because he overtook Blake Jarwin and there's been room for a third pass catcher to then being a guy that you're contemplating streaming a week here or there. But I think right now, Dalton Schultz was a waiver wire pickup for you. You could probably get and cash that ticket in while you have the opportunity to do so. We'll see what happens. When you go back to CeeDee Lamb and Amari Cooper, yes, New England's always notorious for trying to take away the number one wide receiver. If I had to guess, I would think that would probably be Amari Cooper before it would be CeeDee Lamb in this instance. But this is also a situation where we've seen this happen before too, where New England doesn't take away the number one option because you have a team that has kind of a 1A, 1B situation. As a result to that, they don't really game plan to really take away one or the other. And I wouldn't be surprised if that's one of those situations. I wouldn't be surprised if Bill Belichick's looking at this Dallas Cowboy team right now and saying to himself, you know what I have to take away? I have to take away Ezekiel Elliott. I got to take away the run game and be very run-focused this week because that's how Dallas has been beating everybody up, especially for the past 3 weeks leading up to this point. I wouldn't be surprised if that wound up being the defense's focus rather than let's take away and game plan take away one of either Amari Cooper or CeeDee Lamb because that wouldn't make sense. You know the other guy is capable of torturing you if you're going to tilt your defense to one or the other. I think it's more likely they tilt the defense towards Ezekiel Elliott. Now, it doesn't change my opinion on Ezekiel Elliott being a top 5 running back this week, but it may open up things for the wide receivers more so than you would expect heading into this, which is why they're both wide receiver 2s, and I'm still starting them in my lineups this week with confidence, by the way. It's not a situation where I'm doing it because I have to by default. No. I feel confident in starting a CeeDee Lamb and an Amari Cooper this particular week. On the Patriots side of the ball, Damian Harris, he returned to practice today in a limited capacity. It's a good sign. Maybe he'll suit up. I ranked him as if he will. He is my RB24. He's always going to be a low-end RB2, high-end RB3 guy in that situation. We've already proven that with James White out of the picture, he still doesn't get to be the one who gets to catch the passes. It's Brandon Bolden, to some degree, Ramondre Stevenson. It seems like J.J. Taylor is still the guy getting left out, and Ramondre Stevenson's finally out of the doghouse now. We'll see how that continues, but Harris just continues to be a guy who's going to get all the carries, and you're hoping for a touchdown or you're hoping for 100 yards. I think he's got a chance here for one of those two things to happen. That's why he comes in at RB24. I'm not going to feel great about it. I don't love his upside in this matchup at all because the Dallas Cowboys have been very good. Now, they're a little bit banged up front, so we'll see if maybe that gives a little bit more leeway that hasn't necessarily been there, but they've been very, very good against the run so far this season. There's no denying that. Jacoby Myers is of interest to me. He's wide receiver 35. I expect the Cowboys to win this game. I expect them to win by a touchdown, at least. I expect the Patriots to have to come back from behind. We know what happens when they have to come back from behind. Jacoby Myers is going to get a litany of targets. Now, is he going to score? Probably not. Hasn't done it so far this season. Never been a big touchdown guy to begin with. Is he going to get 100 yards? Probably not. But in half-point, full-point PPR leagues, half-point PPR being what we rank from, he's wide receiver 35 for me because he's got a safe, high-volume floor. Where between his receptions and getting you somewhere between 70, 90 yards on a most case basis, especially in these kind of matchups, he has a double-digit floor. So he's going to be a wide receiver 3 for me. Here's a key point. Trayvon Diggs, Dallas Cowboys, he didn't practice again today. He's dealing with an ankle issue from last week. So if he is not able to suit up, that Cowboys secondary is terrible. That Cowboy defense is every bit as bad as it was last year if Trayvon Diggs is not out there. That's the truth. So you like the matchup even more for Jacoby Myers if Trayvon Diggs can't go, because there's nobody out there that you're afraid of being able to take him away. So I think he's a safe floor wide receiver 3. Hunter Henry. He is tight end 13 for me, which puts him as my top streaming tight end option. He's not quite my top 12, but he is my highest end tight end 2. Make all the jokes you want to about Jonnu Smith being the most overpaid tight end blocker ever, because that's exactly what he is. That's exactly what he is. It's a shame. I think Jonnu Smith is more athletic. I think he's more explosive than Hunter Henry. I like Hunter Henry. I think he's a good pass catching tight end. Don't get me twisted, but Jonnu Smith has a more special skill set, especially athletically. But he's not as good of a blocker, and that's what's killing Jonnu Smith. As a result of that, Hunter Henry's running more pass routes, especially in the red zone, off of play action. So if you want to own one, it is Hunter Henry, and he is a streaming option for me this week against the Dallas Cowboys, who are terrible against the tight end position to begin with. And someone's got to catch a touchdown. It's probably more likely to be a Hunter Henry than it is one of the wide receivers of New England Patriots. I mean, quite frankly, this is how it's broken down. There hasn't been many of them to go around, but that's how it's broken down so far. I got a comment in here from BTG7471. Welcome back, sir. Good to see you back. Sorry to get back to you a little bit late. So they just traded Stevenson and McKinnon for Chuba. I'm guessing that means Ramondre Stevenson and Jerick McKinnon for Chuba Hubbard. After seeing reports of CMC not practicing again today, maybe a bit reactionary, but wanted to get ahead of the news if he doesn't play. Yeah, I got no problem with that trade. Look, CMC's dealing with the hamstring. So let's put aside the fact that Hubbard may actually be a high-end RB2 this week, because we saw last week they're finally willing to give him the CMC workload if he is a starting running back, after we had some question about that the first time he went out there as a starter when we saw Rodney Smith taking over that role. Last week they fed it all to Hubbard, and he performed well. So he might wind up being a high-end RB2 this week. But let's put that aside. Let's say CMC does play this week. You still made the right move here. Look, Ramondre Stevenson, even if he's out there, he's just going to be the main ball carrier. He's not going to catch any of the passes. That's still going to be Brandon Bolden. Jerick McKinnon, I think he's somewhat interesting, more so from a DFS standpoint this week. I think he might be involved in the passing game with Darrell Williams, at least to some degree, some sort of rotation there, but it's still going to be Darrell Williams' backfield. Those two guys still have people to leap over. Christian McCaffrey has a hamstring that could flare up again at any moment. That's the problem with hamstring injuries. Even when he's back in an action, you're still going to have to sit there and worry for the rest of the year. Is he going to re-aggravate it? So Hubbard is going to be one of the most valuable handcuffs to have all throughout the season. So even if you don't have CMC, and I'm going to take it from your comment there that you don't, it's still a good move. I don't think it's reactionary at all. I think you put yourself in a decent position, especially for this year. And if nothing else, now you have an asset to potentially trade the Christian McCaffrey owner at some point when he gets overly frustrated from not having McCaffrey each week, or if he does re-injure himself. You may be able to take something very valuable from his team as a result of your handcuff play. So I like the move. Good job, BTG. Getting back to this game, I guess we got to talk about the betting lines on this one. Now, obviously, I'm going to be in on the Dallas Cowboys side. And this is a game that I'm jumping on right now. It's going to be one of my lock bets of the week when we talk about it in the show tomorrow. Spoiler alert, but whatever. It is going to be one of my lock bets of the week. We're talking about the game now. Dallas Cowboys -3.5, mostly because they're on the road here. I don't see any scenario in which the Dallas Cowboys don't win. Now, the over-under set at 50.5. So my parlay here would actually be 3.5 and the under. I don't expect this game to be high scoring. If they actually reach that 50.5 over-under mark, that's because Dallas got them, three quarters of the way there by themselves, which I'm not saying is not possible, but I don't think I'm going to go there. I think with the way the Cowboys have been playing as of late, the Patriots being as inept on offense as they have been, I would say -3.5 plus the under. But my lock is the -3.5 on the Dallas Cowboys in this game. I'm all over that line in this matchup. Let's move on as we keep this thing rolling. We got the Pittsburgh Steelers, Seattle Seahawks. Unfortunately, on Sunday night. No one's excited about it on Sunday night. I'm not excited about it on Sunday night. Nobody wants to sit there and watch Ben Roethlisberger take on Geno Smith. BTG, we love you too. Nobody wants to sit there and watch this. Nobody. Unfortunately, I think we're 3 more weeks away from when the flexed opportunity for the Sunday night games comes to effect for the NFL. Unfortunately. But I think that's where we're at right now. So none of these games will be flexed out, I think, until that point. I don't know if it's 2 or 3 weeks away, but it's a couple more weeks away before we're starting to see, okay, get some rotation here. If it's going to be a bad matchup, we'll get out of it. We needed it for this one. It would have been a decent matchup had Russell Wilson been playing, but it's not going to be, unfortunately. So there's a lot of questions now, fantasy-wise. What do you do? You have Seattle here, Tyler Lockett, DK Metcalf. Now, here's the big thing we got to talk about right off the bat. DK Metcalf, he wasn't on the injury report. Suddenly today, does not practice. So we got to wait and see if he's able to practice tomorrow. And that could drastically change all the fantasy analysis that I'm about to give you based on whether or not DK Metcalf is actually going to play or not, because we do have to be a little bit concerned about him suddenly popping up and not practicing on a Thursday, and it wasn't for rest purposes. So we have to be a little bit concerned about that and watch that tomorrow during Friday. We'll keep you up to date on social media at BellyUpMDFF Show. Assuming he can go, he is my wide receiver 13, even with Geno Smith. Tyler Lockett is my wide receiver 25. So high-end wide receiver 3, almost low-end wide receiver 2 territory. But a lot of talk this week about how Geno Smith more negatively affects Tyler Lockett than he does DK Metcalf, which I don't agree with at all. The argument, of course, has been, Tyler Lockett and Russell Wilson have this big chemistry. Okay, yeah, fine, I'll give you that one. But also, Russell Wilson has the best deep ball. Tyler Lockett has not lived and died by the deep ball in a long time. In fact, since DK Metcalf has gotten there and he's been allowed to play the slot receiver position, he's not just a one-trick pony deep ball threat receiver anymore, and he hasn't been for a couple of years. So I don't know why all of a sudden, because if he's not getting the deep ball, he suddenly takes this dip down in fantasy action. He actually gets targeted more often in that 10 to 15-yard range, which Geno does like to throw. By the way, Leonard Fournette touchdown for Tampa Bay. Come on, I need a Mike Evans for a parlay. But yeah, there you go. We'll get our reaction to that. Leonard Fournette gets the score. He was my RB2, not my RB2 overall. He was in my RB2 range, RB16. Feeling pretty good about that right now. Looking good on Thursday night. Let's keep that rolling. Keep that rolling here, talking about Geno Smith. I mean, on that bad interception play, which was Tyler Lockett's fault because he tripped and fell down, and it wasn't Geno's fault. But he looked for Lockett more than he looked for DK Metcalf when he came in the second half. I don't know why anybody's not pointing to that. And if anything, I think Metcalf is more dependent on jump balls in the red zone and deep balls to get his fantasy value than Tyler Lockett is at this point, especially with the offense they're running. Remember, Tyler Lockett, he's playing the Cooper Kupp role. He's the guy who's getting to do the deep crosses over the middle more than DK Metcalf is. Now, Metcalf has the bigger body. He's the easier target, right? He's the guy you can throw a jump ball to if you don't think anything's open and still be able to make a play. That's why he's still ranked as my wide receiver 13, while Tyler Lockett is my wide receiver 25. My point was more just being, don't suddenly think that Lockett takes this big downturn because Geno Smith is out there and they don't have the deep ball, because that's not what he lived and died by in the first place. We still have a lot of things we don't know, though. I mean, we don't know how good Geno Smith is. We've saw him a long time ago. He's been in this, he's been the backup to Russell Wilson for a while. I'd have to say he looked pretty good, or at the very least, if nothing else, I think you have to feel confident that he has a good grasp on the offense. Because, I mean, he made more audible checks than I've ever seen Russell Wilson make in one half of football when he had to take over for him last week. And, if it wasn't for Tyler Lockett tripping over the guy and falling down and having that last game interception, I mean, Geno Smith had him in a position to come back in that game. So I don't think this is a situation where we have to, hit the panic button on a DK, on a Tyler Lockett. That's the good news because, Russell Wilson, month, maybe more, that he's out for, right? So these guys, if they die off fantasy-wise now, it could really kill your chances to go to playoffs. I don't think that's going to happen here. Against the Pittsburgh Steelers in particular, we saw Courtland Sutton and Tim Patrick with Teddy Bridgewater do their thing last week. Pittsburgh's still a very good defense. They still have a very good pass rush. I still would not want to have to face them with my running back if I could avoid it. However, you can throw the crap out of them on the ball. I mean, you could throw the ball on these guys anytime you want to. That's been proven. So that's why I think I'm okay with DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett in this matchup. Just a little bit more of a, floor not having Russell Wilson out there. Now, let's talk about the running back. So the other key is, okay, how are you going to call this offense? Now, you weren't really passing the ball a ton with Russell Wilson up until this point. We talked about that at slowest pace of play, or one of the slowest pace of plays. Russell Wilson was only throwing the ball 22, 25 times. Will you lean more on the running game? I have to tend to think against the Pittsburgh Steelers, you might not be able to. And if you are going to lean on more on the running game, okay, well, where's the value on Chris Carson? Does that go up? Well, it might not go up this week. He might not play this week. Now, he's my RB26 for now. I do have it ranked as if Chris Carson's going to be the one out there, but he didn't practice again for the second day in a row today, dealing with the neck issue still. I am terrified. In fact, I'm even going to hit this. I am 100% hitting the panic button on Chris Carson. 100% hitting the button on Chris Carson. A chronic long-term neck issue, it's not going to go away. I'm not saying you drop him, but if I can get out on Chris Carson for something of value, even if it's 50 cents on the dollar of value for Chris Carson, I might do it. Especially if I don't have Alex Collins. Now, if you have Alex Collins, I'm going to stay pat. I'm okay with it. Because I think one way or another, you have an RB2 that you'll be able to plug and play in each week. But if you don't, and you can get something of value for Chris Carson, I'm going to do it. Now, I said something of value. Don't go out there and start trading for trailer trash. That's not what I want to see MD Nation do. There's a difference. But if you can get something of value, get out. Here's the thing. Even if he comes back and plays, and they're not expected to be out for the season, but even if he's able to come back and play every single week, you're going to have to wonder, do I have Chris Carson or not this week? He's going to be questionable every single week. This is going to have to be managed every single week. This is why Alex Collins was a valuable pickup for me on the waiver wire report. So I was like, look, even if he doesn't play this week, this is a guy who's going to have the possibility to be able to plug and play in your lineups any given week because Carson now may be out any given week. So he's my RB26 this week. It's a tough matchup. But if he doesn't go, then Alex Collins will be an RB3 for me this week. And so you can plug and play in the flex. And in better matchups, he'll be an RB2 because he, again, while he didn't look fantastic, he looked fine to me. And he got the bell cow workload that you're looking for. So I'm going to have to monitor. But again, Chris Carson did not practice. It may be on its way to being another Alex Collins time this particular week. On the Pittsburgh side of things, Najee Harris, you got to love it. He's my RB5 this week. You always love the volume floor. You've been able to run the ball in Seattle. Finally had the big 100-yard rushing performance last week. I think that just continues. I really do. Najee Harris, my RB5. Not really much we got to talk about there. Let's talk about the wide receivers. A little bit more interesting here. Juju Smith-Schuster out for the year. Out of the way. So guys like Deontay Johnson can be my wide receiver 12 because of the target share I expect him to see. No, I'm not concerned about him getting 2 targets last week. More times than not, he's the guy getting double-digit targets. Last time I checked, Ben Roethlisberger still can't move and needs to get the ball out of his hands quickly. Not worried about that. And then Chase Claypool, my wide receiver 27 on the week, but a wide receiver 3 who has high-end upside. Wouldn't be surprised if he's able to finish as a high-end wide receiver 2 or somewhere in that range. Because now with Juju Smith-Schuster out of the way, you had the target consolidation around a Deontay, around Chase Claypool. That's all Claypool ever needed. Claypool was one of my top 5 busts coming into the season. And I still stand by that based on what we saw the first few games. Because I kept saying, if Juju Smith-Schuster is out there, he gets too many targets for Chase Claypool to actually be a thing. And because Ben Roethlisberger can't throw the deep ball that often anymore, it's going to be very few and far between when Claypool has his big games. You're not going to be able to play him when they actually happen. You're not going to know to play him when they actually happen. Now you have a floor. So now you could play Claypool with the hope that he hits the upside because he has the big play capability. He has the touchdown capability. But now you know he has a floor because you're looking at a guy who should get 7+ targets in almost every matchup given how this offense operates. That's what you needed out of Chase Claypool. So he's a must play wide receiver 3 for me this week with upside and may continue to grow in value from there. I will mention James Washington did practice in a limited capacity today. I'm not worried about James Washington really taking away anything. Pat Freiermuth, if he ever completely overtakes Eric Ebron, I think he will be a sleeper tight end. It still hasn't happened. Eric Ebron still playing way too much of the time. Let's move in the Monday night. The Monday night game, Buffalo versus Tennessee. Now, I think this is going to be a one-sided matchup, but I think it will be exciting for fantasy purposes on both sides. So are the Bills. They're on the road. Josh Allen, my QB2. The only reason Josh Allen's not my QB1 this week in a sweet, sweet matchup against Tennessee on Monday Night Football is just because Patrick Mahomes has a very good matchup in his own right against Washington. And after listening to him this week talk about reevaluating himself and all that, I'm like, I think Patrick Mahomes is going to go Donkey Kong this week. So I made him my QB1. Now, I will say this. Josh Allen will move to my QB1 if Tyreek Hill is not going to wind up being able to suit up this week. So I'll put that out there right now. So Josh Allen still might want to be my QB1 overall in the week. Long-winded way of saying Josh Allen is awesome in a great matchup. You should be salivating at the mouth for that Monday night matchup, having Josh Allen in your lineups, obviously speaking. Alert, though. Here's what I will say about this. Buffalo Bills, they're part of the bye catastrophe that's about to happen in week 7 where, half the league goes on bye at the same time for some crazy reason. So if you have Josh Allen, make sure you're making a note of that. See if you can pick up a quarterback this week, this Sunday, that has a good matchup and kind of get ahead of it. This is the bye weeks. I haven't talked about this, so let's take some time now, philosophically wise, trying to help you guys out from a fantasy football perspective. This is the time of year where the good fantasy managers get that leg up on the bad, lucky managers. What I mean by that is you always know you have these managers who don't actually follow fantasy football very, very closely, but yet wind up having these really good scores, have these really good teams, have a good record right now heading into this spot of the season. This is what separates the men from the boys. Because now in the bye weeks, you got to be flexible, you got to have depth, you got to be able to look ahead, at least a couple of weeks ahead. I don't like to look too far ahead in redraft leagues because you don't know what's going to happen a month from now. But 2 weeks ahead, maybe 3, that's where you start to operate when you're trying to finagle your way through these bye weeks. And if you can come out rosy on the other side going through these bye weeks, that's what can put you in prime position to clinch your division, make the playoffs, whatever the case may be. And you're not fighting for your life come week 13, week 14. So this is when you got to make these moves. This is when shows like this are the most important tool for you. And that's why, again, always hit us up on social media, on our DMs, at Belly Up MDF Show. We'll help you out every step of the way if you have any waiver pickups that you need to make. But get out ahead of this, especially week 7. I think week 9 is the other big one, but there's bye weeks every week from now until week 14. So just kind of keep that in mind. Look a week ahead, at least if you can, maybe 2. Start to make those matchups because you don't want to waste resources. When we talk about the waiver wire report, every Tuesday, I don't want you to be in a position where you're having to waste all your fab, where you're having to give up your first priority on a guy that is only going to play for you 1 week because you're trying to win that matchup and you're just streaming. I don't want you to waste resources in those positions. I want you to use those resources for guys that are going to help you for a long period of time, if not the entire season. That's what I want you to use it on. So that's why I want you to look ahead on Sunday. Hey, I need a quarterback week 7. Pick the guy up on Sunday. So that way you're not in a position to have to bid for everybody else who's going to be going after that top streaming quarterback the following week because they also need, a replacement for their guy who's on a bye week. So just a little fantasy football tidbit for you guys that I want MD Nation to have the edge on heading into your matchups through these bye weeks. They're about to get real heavy. So getting back to this Buffalo Bills-Tennessee game, Stephon Diggs, he's gonna smash. He's having a bounce back week this week. He's my wide receiver 5. Obviously, you love the matchup against Tennessee. The targets, for the most part, have been there. Outside of last week, he's still sniffing around the double-digit plus target mark. That's all you really care about when it comes to Stephon Diggs. Emmanuel Sanders is not going to continue to steal all the touchdowns all the time. It's not going to continue all throughout the year. That's really the biggest reason why Stephon Diggs has not been the wide receiver 1 that you've drafted him to be. And yet, while I think we've seen the floor performance out of Stephon Diggs, he's still the wide receiver 18 right now in the year. And we've seen, I think, the absolute floor. He's going to be fine. He's going to be fine. You fire him up with confidence this week. I expect him to be a top 5 wide receiver. Zach Moss. I'm going to be very curious to watch Zach Moss and Devin Singletary this week. Zach Moss actually coming in RB23, so he's a low-end RB2 for me. Devin Singletary is a low-end RB3 flex consideration. But I'm going to be very interested to see if what we saw last week continues. Does that trend continue? Because what we saw last week was Zach Moss starting to pull away from Devin Singletary in utilization. Snaps, routes run, and of course carries. Does that continue for a second week? If it does, then we can have confidence in moving Zach Moss up to RB2 the rest of the way. So that's why we're very interested to see exactly how that shakes out on a team in which it is at least making more of an effort when it has the opportunity to do so, to use the running backs. So we'll have to keep an eye on that. That's what I'm most excited for there. Dawson Knox, top 5 tight end for me this week. Send him in. Top 5 tight end. Absolutely love Dawson Knox this week. No brainer. On the Tennessee side, obviously playing Derrick Henry. Is this a tough matchup? Yeah. The Bills are the number 1 rush defense in the NFL. Does that mean Derrick Henry finishes outside of top 5? I don't think so. I have him in RB2. Guess what? Spoiler alert. If Christian McCaffrey winds up being inactive, Derrick Henry's going to be my RB1 on the week, even in a tough matchup. The guy's getting 30 carries a game, and he's Derrick Henry, ladies and gentlemen. They're going to need him in this matchup. He's matchup proof. He's matchup proof. He's the definition of matchup proof. So you're not worried about Derrick Henry. A.J. Brown, Julio Jones, much more interesting conversation. Both practice in full today. Great signs. For 2 guys that are trying to work their way back from hamstrings, that means A.J. Brown hasn't had any setbacks, and suddenly Julio Jones is healthy enough to practice in full, which is also a great sign because he hasn't been doing much of anything up until this point. So that means they played it cautious with him. They took their time. It sounds like he's going to be activated and okay. Keep in mind, this is a Monday game. This is the Monday night game, which means today's would be the Wednesday practice. They practiced yesterday in limited capacity, both of them. They practiced in full today. Today would be the Wednesday practice for them. So pretty much at the beginning of the practice week, they're practicing in full. So that's the good news as far as a health perspective goes. Both Brown and Julio Jones have had much to be desired when it comes to fantasy. And yeah, you don't love the matchup this week against the Buffalo Bills either. Here's what I will say. I don't know if Tre'Davious White is going to shadow anybody in particular, or if this is the week where he'll just play, his side of the field, and whoever happens to come in contact with his side of the field is the one he winds up sticking that week. I will say I think the Buffalo game plan will probably be centerized around stopping Derrick Henry as much as possible, and I do think the Bills themselves are going to have absolutely no trouble putting up a ton of points in this game. Just none whatsoever. So as long as those 2 things are true, if nothing else, there should be a good amount of volume headed towards A.J. Brown and Julio Jones' way, especially if they're fully active and have their full workloads this week, which it seems like they're both trending to do so. So A.J. Brown comes in for me at wide receiver 19. He's a must-play wide receiver 2. He is in my lineup. Julio Jones, not so much. Julio Jones, my wide receiver 39 this week. You can contemplate him in there. I think in some ways you can argue that there's a safe floor because, again, I do think they're going to see extra volume headed their way because they're going to have to throw the ball a lot in this game, I believe, because of how I expect this game script to go. But other than that one game, we still haven't really seen it yet, and we haven't seen him now in a couple of weeks either in responding to that injury. So that's why he's still a wide receiver 39 for me. But again, we will update this thing as we go. From a health perspective, both trending in the right direction. What we're going to do now, I want to take one more quick break, and then we're going to end the show on the mailbag segment. So everybody stay tuned on the MD's Fantasy Football Show, and we'll be back with you all right after this. You can get championship footballs at championshipfootballs.com. They offer a 100% money-back guarantee on every single souvenir football that they sell. It's the coolest present that they'll open that day, guaranteed. There's nothing worse than trying to find the right gift for somebody that already has everything. Whether that special present is for a Tampa Bay Buccaneers fan or an Alabama Crimson Tide backer, maybe Gramps is a lifelong Dallas Cowboys supporter, or your brother-in-law is in LSU Tiger territory. Know a member of the Baylor Alumni Association? Is there a better Father's Day gift for someone who's a Kansas City Chiefs fan? Send them the coolest present they'll open that day, guaranteed. Now, if your favorite pro team is the Buffalo Bills or those Minnesota Vikings, well, we're sorry about that. Also, if you're a New Mexico State Aggie or a Tulane Green Wave alum, not much they can do. After all, the name isn't nice effort, you had a pretty good season footballs.com. The name is championshipfootballs.com. The coolest present they'll open that day, guaranteed.
You're listening to the MD's Fantasy Football Show.
Welcome back, MD Nation, to the MD's Fantasy Football Show, streaming to you live on social media at BellyUpMDFF Show and on YouTube, the MD's Fantasy Football Show channel. Please subscribe. As always, I'm your host, Dan Mader, giving you the Thursday night game cast while we preview the matchup for the late slate of games heading into Week 6. I do want to give you the betting lines for the Sunday night and the Monday night game. We got Pittsburgh Steelers -5 against Seattle. I'm not betting on that game. I'm not touching it. It's an over-under at 42.5. I personally will not wager on that matchup. There's a lot of different ways I can see that game going. I am, however, going to throw in a lock bet, another lock bet of the week. Buffalo Bills -5.5 on the road against Tennessee. Over-under set at 54. I will throw some shekels on the over-under as well. This will be a same-game parlay. I will look to target. I think the Bills are going to put up a lot of points. I think Tennessee will be able to score a little bit in their own right, too. So I'm going to same-game parlay that with -5 and a over 54, but my lock bet will be the -5.5 for the Buffalo Bills heading into that Monday night matchup. All right, guys, guess what time it is?
The mail's here.
It's time for the mailbag segment. Now, all you got to do to get on the mailbag segment is hit us up on social media at BellyUpMDFF Show. You send in a question, I pick up my few favorite ones, I put you in the mailbag. But we will answer every single question we get because we're all about trying to help the people get the edge and win their matchups every single week. So first up, I had Kiki. Should I trade John Taylor and Deontay Johnson for Alvin Kamara and Joe Mixon? Yeah. Yes, you should. Yes, you should. Look, I think there's actually potential that Alvin Kamara, what he showed last week, getting back involved in the passing game, might continue. And I think Michael Thomas returning will also help Alvin Kamara. And he's already been just as valuable, not more valuable than Jonathan Taylor on a week-to-week basis anyway. And, of course, whenever you're able to get a wide receiver, too, which is what Deontay Johnson is, for an RB1, you pull the trigger. So, Kiki, yeah, pull the trigger on that deal. Love that deal for you. Ronald, he asked, should I trade Damian Williams for Brandon Cooks? Now, I'm going to suspect that, and I know this question came in before the news about Damian Williams. So, if Damian Williams hadn't contracted COVID and was playing this week, I would say 1,000% yes, because Brandon Cooks will be a wide receiver 2, at the very least a high-end wide receiver 3, volume-based the rest of the year, and will be able to help you the rest of the year. Damian Williams has a deadline of when he's going to help you by because David Montgomery will be back at some point. Now, I say that, before the news because I'd have to imagine at this point that deal may no longer be on the table. I don't know. But if it still is, pull the trigger, or hopefully pull the trigger before Damian Williams contracted COVID, or at least before the news came out. Adrian, should I trade Robert Woods for A.J. Brown? Yes. Yes, you should. A.J. Brown is too good to continue to not improve this way. He does have wide receiver 1 capabilities. Because of the way this offense is setting up with the Rams right now, I don't think Robert Woods will ever overtake Cooper Kupp unless there was an injury to Cooper Kupp. A.J. Brown, I think, still can finish as a top 12 wide receiver the rest of the way. So, yeah, I would trade Robert Woods for A.J. Brown. That's a good sell high, buy low, by the way, right now, too. So, good job, Adrian. Make that deal. Zach, last one. Sam Darnold or Taylor Heinicke this week? I actually have them back-to-back in my rankings. I do have Sam Darnold at number 12, Taylor Heinicke at number 13. But, again, that's contingent on Christian McCaffrey. If Christian McCaffrey goes, and I have Sam Darnold with his check down with his safety blanket a little bit ahead. But if he can't, I will be flip-flopping Taylor Heinicke and Sam Darnold in the rankings, and I'll be ranking Taylor Heinicke ahead. So that's going to greatly depend on the availability of Christian McCaffrey. So when you know that, that'll dictate who you have at quarterback. Before we go, I want to recap where the game is thus far to this point. We're at halftime. Bucks are up 21-7. At the half, Tom Brady, 20 of 26, 186 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception. Leonard Fournette has 40 yards on the ground already with a touchdown, and he has 40 yards through the air. he's just lighting it up all over the place. Antonio Brown, I didn't get any word as to whether or not Antonio Brown returned or not, so we'll have to watch that, dealing with a foot issue. But he had 5 receptions for 52 yards and a touchdown on 7 targets. Chris Godwin, 5 receptions, 43 yards on 5 targets. Mike Evans, right now, only 1 catch for 22 yards. That was like one of the first plays of the game on 3 targets. We'll see if that gets corrected in the second half or not. And on the Eagles side of the ball, Jalen Hurts, not looking good. 5 of 14, 54 yards. Does have a passing touchdown. Does have 20 yards on the ground. Miles Sanders has 1 carry and 1 target, 1 reception for 4 yards. Kenneth Gainwell, though, also only has 1 target. Zach Ertz, 2 receptions, 21 yards, a touchdown on 4 targets. Devonta Smith being really disappointing, only 1 reception for 6 yards on 2 targets. With this game being 21-7 right now, I think what we're going to see in the second half is probably the Eagles come out and throw the ball a ton around. So more remains to be seen. Again, if anything big happens from this game that we have to cover, we'll go over it with you on social media like we will with any other player news update notifications at Belly Up MDFF Show. Make sure you check out this show, again, on your favorite pod streaming app or any of our shows on your favorite pod streaming app. If you missed any of them from out the week, we'll be back tomorrow on the Unhinged Radio Network from 6 to 7:30 at unhingedsn.airtime.pro. And we'll be back again at 9 p.m. on social media at Belly Up MDFF Show and on the MD's Fantasy Football Show YouTube channel to give you the MD's DFS contest, which is a free contest we do for you on DraftKings. We put the link out. I already posted it once this week. We'll post it again during the show, and I'll post it a couple more times up until Sunday. Make sure you get your chance because you have a chance to win 1 free week of Easy Sports betting data. And if you win the week, your name becomes eligible for the October giveaway, which is a championship football from championshipfootballs.com. And so far, I've won both weeks, which means the odds are more in your favor because if you beat me one of these 2 weeks, there'll be less names in the hat because I don't put my own name in the hat. Guys, take it easy. Have a good night. I hope the rest of the way, whatever you need to happen in this Thursday night game happens. We'll be talking to you tomorrow night, so take care until then.